In 2014, researchers at the University of Virginia gave people a simple choice. Sit alone in a quiet room for 15 minutes with nothing but their own thoughts, or press a button that would deliver a small electric shock to their ankle, a jolt they had already described as painful enough that they would pay money to avoid it. 2/3 of the men pressed the button. One person pressed it 190 times. The researchers had expected people to enjoy the quiet. We have memories. We have imagination. We have an entire inner world. But the untrained mind does not like to be alone with itself. And that discomfort you feel right now, sitting with that fact, is exactly what this video is about. What I'm going to show you in the next few minutes is not what you've been told about the comfort zone. It is not get uncomfortable and your life will improve. That is the internet version. It's hollow. The real story is neurological. It is about what actually happens inside your brain when you choose safety over growth, again and again and again. And it is considerably more serious than most people realize. By the end of this video, you'll understand the mechanism, and you'll have 3 specific practices, backed by clinical research, that actually work, not motivation, mechanism. The term comfort zone was never meant to be used the way it is today. It traces back to a 1908 experiment by psychologists Robert Yerkes and John Dodson. They were studying the relationship between arousal, how activated, alert, and engaged you are, and performance. What they found is now called the Yerkes-Dodson curve, and it tells a story almost nobody gets right. At low arousal and when everything is easy, familiar, and safe, performance is steady but flat. You are not failing. You are not unhappy. But you are not growing either. This is the comfort zone. Not a place of happiness, a place of managed predictability. As arousal increases, as difficulty, novelty, and challenge enter the picture, performance rises sharply. This narrow band just outside your comfort zone is what researchers call optimal anxiety. It is the zone where your brain is most engaged, most neurologically active, and most capable of forming new connections. Athletes call it being in the zone. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called it flow. But push too far, too fast, into the panic zone, and performance collapses. Overwhelm replaces engagement. The brain shifts from learning mode to survival mode. The entire architecture of personal growth lives in that narrow corridor between comfort and panic. Not at the extremes, in the middle. And here is what most people miss. That corridor is not a fixed location. It moves. And if you spend enough time inside your comfort zone, it moves the wrong way. Here is where the science becomes uncomfortable. Neuroscience has confirmed something that should fundamentally change how you think about playing it safe. The brain is not static. It is constantly rewriting itself in response to your behavior. This is called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity works in both directions. Every time you choose growth, challenge, and discomfort, your brain builds new pathways. It becomes more flexible, more capable of handling novel situations, more resilient to change. But every time you choose to avoid, retreat, and stay comfortable, the avoidance pathway strengthens. Not just your behavior becomes more avoidant. The brain structure itself adapts to reinforce it. The neural circuits that handle fear and novelty, centered in the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, become progressively more reactive to anything unfamiliar. In practical terms, the longer you stay in your comfort zone, the larger threats feel outside it. The brain is not protecting you. It is training you to be smaller. Psychologists call this avoidance reinforcement. Every time you choose the familiar over the unknown, you send a signal to your brain. The unknown is dangerous. The brain files that signal. It builds it into its operating model. And the next time a new opportunity, a difficult conversation, or an unfamiliar challenge appears, the threat signal arrives faster, louder, and with more urgency. Michael Easter, the journalist who spent 33 days hunting caribou in the Alaskan backcountry researching this topic, put it precisely. Our sheltered, temperature-controlled, under-challenged lives may be the leading cause of many of our most urgent physical and mental health problems. Not just psychological ones, physical ones. Depression, anxiety. the sense that life lacks meaning. Research is increasingly linking all of these to a life that has been made too comfortable, too reliably safe, for too long. This is not hyperbole. This is not a motivational speech. This is neuroscience describing in clinical terms what happens to a person who never leaves the room. If you're still here, you already know something most people avoid knowing. Subscribe to this channel. Every Tuesday and Friday, I share stories and science exactly like this, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Because the 3 practices I'm about to share are not what the internet tells you to do. They come from clinical research on how the brain actually learns to tolerate and then seek discomfort. And the first one you can do tonight. Clinical psychology has developed a precise understanding of how to move the comfort zone boundary outward without triggering the panic response that makes the whole attempt collapse. The core principle: the step must be small enough that your nervous system registers it as safe, but different enough that it registers as novel. A step that is too large does not produce a growth memory. It produces another fear memory, and fear memories are the building blocks of a comfort zone that never expands. Here is what that looks like in practice. Practice 1. The discomfort audit. For the next 7 days, once per day, write down one thing you avoided doing because it felt uncomfortable. Not one thing you failed at, one thing you did not attempt. The phone call you did not make, the conversation you postponed, the application you did not submit, the gym you drove past. You are not going to act on these things yet. You are simply going to name them, because the first failure of avoidance is that it is invisible. You tell yourself you will do it later, when you are ready, when conditions are better. The audit makes the avoidance visible. It gives it a name, and named things lose approximately half their power. Practice 2. The 2-minute rule, but applied to discomfort. Take the smallest item from your discomfort audit, the one that causes the least anxiety when you read it back. Now commit to 2 minutes of it. Not completion, not success. 2 minutes of contact with the thing. Open the email and read it. Walk into the gym and stand there. Dial the number and let it ring. This is what clinical psychologists call graduated exposure. Research published in 2025 in Clinical Psychology Review, covering 49 randomized trials and 3,645 participants, confirmed that graduated, small-step exposure is consistently more effective than forcing large confrontations with fear. A small step produces a safety memory. A safety memory is what rewires the brain's threat response. You are not building courage through willpower, you are building it through evidence. Each small step sends a signal. This was survivable. File that. Use it next time. Practice 3. The identity shift. After you complete practice 2, after the 2 minutes of contact, write one sentence. Not a reflection. An identity statement. I am someone who makes the call. I am someone who walks into rooms that feel uncomfortable. I am someone who does the thing even when it doesn't feel ready. This is not affirmation culture. This is behavioral science. The research of Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck demonstrated that people who frame their identity around effort and growth, rather than fixed ability, consistently outperform those who don't across every domain studied. The identity statement is the anchor. It makes the behavior sticky. It tells your brain, this is who I am now, not just what I did today. 3 practices. 1 audit, 1 2-minute contact, 1 sentence. That is the mechanism. Not the motivation, the mechanism. Go back to those 200 people in the room. They were not broken. They were not weak. They were doing exactly what a brain that has been trained by comfort does when it encounters silence and stillness. It looks for anything else. Anything stimulating, familiar, or active enough to escape the discomfort of being present with itself. You have done the same thing. So have I. So has everyone. But here is what the researchers also found. The people who had a regular practice of sitting quietly, of being alone with their thoughts without reaching for something, found it progressively easier. Not because the discomfort disappeared, because they had trained their brains to register it as safe. That is what you are building. Not a life without discomfort. A brain that knows it can survive discomfort. And once your brain knows that, the comfort zone stops shrinking. It starts expanding. One audit, one 2-minute contact, one identity sentence. Tonight, not when you feel ready. Tonight. If this gave you something real, subscribe to this channel. New video every Tuesday and Friday. No hype, no shortcuts, just the science and the stories that actually change how you think. The books that inform this video are linked below. Michael Easter's The Comfort Crisis is the one I'd start with. It will permanently change how you see the life you've been calling safe. All links in the description. I'll see you in the next one.